gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of Savage with Mercy. I'm Landon. What I have for you today is something I'm calling the Dad Forum. I brought on 3 dads that are in a similar stage of life as myself, and I asked them 3 questions. Now, as you're going to hear, these 3 questions stemmed into other topics and other discussions, but it was all surrounding how are other dads navigating being a husband, a father, and then balancing personal and professional goals. I've often wondered, how are other dads doing it? And this was my opportunity to ask these questions and to really learn from other dads. The 3 questions that we discussed were, how did you or are you adjusting your marriage relationship to include children? How do you establish roles in the home? So how do you determine what your wife does and what you do in the home? And then lastly, it's very common for us as parents to go through seasons where there is a lack of intimacy, physical intimacy in the relationship. And so we talked about, how do you navigate that? How do you still make physical intimacy a priority and be intentional with it in the marriage? Before we hop into this, I just want to remind everyone to please subscribe and follow wherever you are listening or watching to this podcast, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble. You can find us there at Savage with Mercy. We are on Instagram at Savage with Mercy. And then, of course, if you are listening on either Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you're subscribed there as well. I want to thank you all for joining me for this episode of Savage with Mercy. Let's hop right into it. Casey, you just competed in a powerlifting meet, right?
I did.
Was that last weekend?
Yeah, last Saturday.
And this was a USAPL?
Yep, USAPL lift. It's second USAPL lift.
This is your second USAPL lift. Okay. What'd you place? How'd you do?
I've definitely done better in the past, to say the least. I'm sort of kind of doing like a hybrid program. I'm actually got, I think it's 19 or 20 weeks, and I'm doing bodybuilding again. So
are you really?
Yeah. So I was trying to do a hybrid version of the program, and it's just hard, to try to do both of those. But 2 of my clients were competing in it. And so, I wanted to be a part of it with them. Last time I coached both of them, and then this time we all 3 did it together. So that was fun. Awesome. The numbers sound great. They're just not what my previous best were. So obviously I'm just like, I didn't do good then. But yeah, it was okay. I ended up doing what I got. My squat was 425, and then I failed 451 twice. Failed all of my bench presses.
All your bench presses?
All of it. I don't know what the deal was. I just could not get the weight to move. I had no idea. And it was 281, and I've done 350. I did like 315 like 4 years ago when I was 20 pounds lighter and had 0 programming knowledge about bench press. So I don't really know what the deal was, but and then I got 2 deadlifts attempts. The top one was 545, which it's good. It's just everything was lower than my previous, which is fine. I'm going to do it again, though, because I feel defeated. So I'm going to have to go back and compete again for sure to do better.
We're gonna bring one back to our home turf.
Oh, yeah. I'll be in that one for sure.
Do one at our gym.
What federation will it be? Or will it not necessarily be under a federation?
No, it would probably be a federation. I just don't know which one yet. I think the USAPL has been, I don't want to say saturated in St. Louis, but there's plenty of them already. So
I competed just once in powerlifting back in 2019. Yeah, because it was right before my daughter was born. It was in March. It was almost, whatever that is, 4 years ago. Yeah, that's crazy. It was March of 2019. My daughter then was born in June of that same year. And I was in the 220-pound weight class. This was an APA meet, American Powerlifting Association. So their standards, I'll say, are just, I'm not going to say lower. They're just less tight, I would say, as USAPL. I was in a drug-tested division, but they have non-tested divisions as well. What weight class were you in, Casey? I think you might have a few pounds on me.
It was the 100. I dropped down this time, the 100-kilogram class.
So what is that in pounds?
I weighed in at I think it was 220, 219.
Okay. So I weighed in at 208. I weighed in really light, unintentionally.
Okay.
But I had a 1250 total.
Nice.
I had a 455 squat, a 295 bench, and if we have the time, I'll get into why my bench sucked. 295 bench, and then I had a 500-pound deadlift. That was a squat and deadlift PR. Bench, I had been doing 295 for reps going into the meet, but the rack was set way too low for my height. And it's something that I should have caught early on and had them move, but I didn't. And then the spotters, or like the guy doing the lift off, wasn't someone that I was used to, and that can throw you off. But I think one of the fellow lifters in the meet unintentionally sabotaged me, to be honest. We were warming up in the warm-up room, and I hadn't done a whole lot of training because you have to wait for the up command, right? With bench press. And I needed to practice that a little bit, like waiting to press until you hear the up command. And so one of my fellow competitors was spotting me, and I had 275 on the bar, and I was like, I'm going to bring it down to my chest, and I'm not going to push it up until you say up. Well, he misunderstood me. And so I was holding it on my chest for a good like 5-6 seconds, and I was like, are you going to say something? He was like, oh yeah, up. And so I like grinded it up, and I think that really like taxed me. So I was kind of fried from like holding that 275 down there, and then the fact that the rack was way too low. I hit my opening attempt, which was 295, and then I bombed on the next two ones. So that's my bench story.
Danny, do you compete as well, or have you competed?
No, I've never competed in powerlifting. I trained powerlifting for a long time and got my totals way up. Just never actually pulled the trigger on jumping in anything. I've done a couple CrossFit competitions, and we did DECA. We hosted a DECA competition last year. Did that, and besides that, it's just like mud runs sporadically. But yeah,
I thought I was going to be the only one that hadn't done a powerlifting competition as an adult. So I'm glad that there's that. But then Danny, you followed it up with, but I've also done DECA and CrossFit, and I'm like, well, I haven't done those either. So
DECA's pretty interesting, man. It's fun.
What is DECA? I'm not even sure what that is.
It's Spartan owns it. Okay. So it's basically like a mini functional challenge, and there's different levels of it. But Casey, how many exercises was it? Like 15?
I don't know. My brain was I wasn't alive during that. So
yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's a race for time. You got to get so many reps at the stations before you can move on. And you're just going. It's a tough competition, but once you finish it, it's over. Like you finish those reps, it's over. And they have different levels where between each one, you could have like a 100-meter run, or I think there's even like a quarter-mile run. So it's basically the same exercises we did with a 5K mixed in it. So, I mean, it's a pretty competitive event, and they have like national standards and stuff now, and big national competition for people that are taking it really seriously.
Wow. I haven't competed in that at all. Games. But I haven't competed in it, but just from what I've seen, and I've had a couple of friends and clients that have competed in it as well, it definitely favors like your high condition athletic type. If you were to put it side by side to CrossFit, I think CrossFit, you still have to have pretty good strength. To compete. Yeah. And DECA, you don't necessarily have to have as much strength to compete at the high level, but you better be conditioned, because I've looked at the workouts and I'm like, that looks like a grind.
Yeah.
Matt, your background is more Olympic lifting, right? Sorry, Annie.
For time, you're going to be hurting.
Danny is a humble person, though. He won the whole thing. He wasn't going to say it. Yeah.
At our gym.
Yeah. He dominated.
Still.
And I hope Dave watches this podcast, because Danny's older brother lost to Danny.
And well, y'all are definitely getting me like a little bit insecure. I need to go sign up for some kind of adult lifting competition or DECA or something, because I think the only thing that I've done since like college has been like what you said, Danny, was like mud runs or we did like a hood to coast run, which is like a really long freaking run, which I do not identify as a runner anymore, not even since like like high school. But yeah, apparently I got to sign up for a powerlifting competition now.
It's funny, you get to those like mud runs and they're supposed to be just, fun, and you're helping each other out, and my mindset, I'm there to win. Like, I don't know who I'm winning against because but I'm there to win, whatever it is.
Let's talk about that for a second. This just popped into my head, and it's consistent with what we're going to talk about today, but this was not a part of my questions at all. I feel it's very helpful for men that are in the position of life where we are. We've been married for a few years. We have kids. It's very beneficial for us to compete. I'm not saying like, not even like every year, but like from time to time, do some type of competition. I think that's very, very beneficial just to keep you sharp and something to kind of work on, something that's just yours. And especially if it's like health or fitness related, even better, right? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would say whatever the competition, I think just pushing yourself physically to that point. I mean, I just think on the mental side of things, I just think that total exhaustion, whatever you choose, whether it's CrossFit or powerlifting, bodybuilding, they're all different type of fatigues, but fatiguing yourself to that point, I think it's important for just anybody to do that. I always like to say to clients in the gym that you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think there's a lot of mental growth that comes with that. So yeah, I think it's super important, honestly.
I think after a long time of being really competitive, you end up creating competition when it's not actually, but it's because you've learned that it's what drives you to be better. Like, you almost, like Casey was saying, you need to find ways to make yourself uncomfortable. And sometimes that's, I'll speak for Casey here, but he'll compete with anybody in our company just to get them riled up because he needs somebody chasing him.
100%.
Yeah.
He wants that person coming after him because he knows he's going to beat him.
Yeah.
But Landon, just to make sure I understand your question as well, because I might have misinterpreted some of it. You say, men around our age or around our stage of life sometimes choose a competition or maybe they're seeking some sort of competition. That's kind of what I heard initially. And what I think about when I think of that is, I think a lot of I even have former clients or friends who have never done, any of these runs or never competed in any of these sports, but all of a sudden now, like, they kind of challenge themselves with doing something new or trying something new. And I think part of it is a little bit of, they know that if they commit to something and they sign themselves up for something, that they're going to develop a little bit of that discipline that comes with it. Or it's just something that's just going to help their confidence. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there's some confidence piece there. There's some of that, like, I'm just going to sign up for this because I know if I just do it, it's going to yield some results, and it's going to make me more competitive, or it's going to make me more confident. So, because I've definitely seen that happen a handful of times where somebody just randomly like, hey, I'm just going to do this because I've never done it before, and I need to challenge myself in something new.
And you see a snowball effect with those kind of people too, because once they accomplish that one thing, they're like, what's next? And then they want to try something new. And it's really neat to see that.
That's true. Yeah. All of a sudden now they're like a serial challenger.
Yeah. Well, like so many, and Matt, you were talking about like people that have like never competed in any way, but then there are those that they've been athletes up until college, and then they start a career and a family, and then, okay. So yeah, then, and they're not doing those types of things anymore. And I really feel for men, especially to keep us sharp, we kind of need that outlet of competition to keep us mentally and I would say primarily mentally sharp, but of course physically fit as well. And then of course, as you age, your testosterone levels lower and you lose some of that aggression. And I think competition really helps with that. And then that bleeds, of course, into how you show up for your family, and then how you show up for your job, or your business, how you make money, whatever. And Yeah, just keeping you sharp. I think it's extremely beneficial.
Agree.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's been a handful of times where, whether it's been a pickup basketball game or one of these mud runs, I'm like, why am I not doing more competition like activities? Because this is just a ton of fun. First off, I'm just enjoying it, right? And then secondly, I'm like, man, I could see this benefiting me more. So why am I not doing this more?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like also when you're training or you're prepping for something, because we were all competitive people, you're taking the training serious leading into it. But I have found that whenever I'm doing things like this or training and getting ready for these events, I'm also like everything else is falling in the line around me because I'm being disciplined on my own fitness. I'm just making sure that I'm doing, all the little things like doing things around the house or helping out or just, I feel like my level of productivity goes way higher because I've noticed when I'm not training for things like that, like I'm just getting lazy, like I'll just worry about this later. I'll just do this later, but whenever the health side is in check, everything just kind of follows suits behind that.
Casey, that kind of goes in line with exactly what I was thinking of with that person that like picks a challenge or picks a competition to do, is because they just have this assumption that it's going to help their discipline and it's going to help in other areas of their life. Like they just know, like, all right, if I just do this one thing, I know it's going to bleed into other areas of my life. Which, hey, if that works for that person, if they really can't identify like what it is they truly want to work on, like if they don't really have a defined goal, like you can ask a guy our age, like, hey, what are your fitness goals or something like that? They'll probably just give you something generic. So if finding a competition to compete in is kind of a means to an end to affect these other areas that they truly want to impact, maybe that's a good excuse for them to do it and to have fun.
Yeah. I feel like consistency attracts consistency, or maybe structure. If you focus on one area of your life and bring structure to that, it just tends to bleed into other areas of your life. It's like, why not make this more structured as well? You've got structure here. It's easier to find structure for the other areas of your life.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Just for those listening, let's just go around the room and I'll have you guys introduce yourselves. Matt, we'll start with you, and then Casey, and then Danny.
Yeah. Well, Casey, Danny, this is the first time I'm meeting you guys, so this is kind of natural for me to introduce myself to y'all. But yeah, Landon, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah, Matthew Kite, but I do go by Matt. So thanks, Casey, for correcting that earlier. My Zoom shows otherwise. I think the only time I hear Matthew is when I'm in trouble by my mom or my wife or something like that. Let's see a little bit about myself. I do have 2 kids. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, Callie, and I have a 10-month-old son, Jackson. We live in Katy, Texas, which is just outside of Houston. Landon, I don't even know if you knew that we moved since we last spoke, I think.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I did know that.
Yeah. So we were in Dallas for the 8 years before this past year. So we're still pretty new down here. Moved for one of those obvious reasons. When you have your second kid or you're about to have your second kid, it's let's get closer to family. So my family, her family, both here in the Houston area. But yeah, before that, we kind of did it solo in Dallas. No family around us up there. And when COVID hit, it really just like kind of doubled down on us. Yeah. But yeah, so let's see. Been in the fitness or the strength conditioning and fitness industry for the past, I don't know, what is it now, been 11 years. Spent a big chunk of that in a fitness franchise brand. Landon, that's where you and I met, of course. And at the end of last year, decided to take a lot of that experience that I grew during that time and just to do it on my own. So I started my own fitness brand.
And what's it called? I can see it on your shirt. But
what's it called? Yeah. Boom, there it is. Sorry.
That's
a little self-promotion there.
Yeah.
So you can't see the fine print, but it's a human performance brand. So yeah, had a lot of fun. And of course, my wife supporting me as well as we were kind of coming up with the name and what it is. And truly what I'm doing now is remote fitness and nutrition coaching. So mostly remote. And that's the intended outcome there. I think what inspired me, and there's always a positive output for if you ask different people about COVID, hopefully you can pull something positive from the from the whole experience. But I think one of the positives that came from that was seeing not only the company that I was working in and the coaches that I was, we were all working on how can we impact someone without necessarily having to be there one-on-one with them all the time. And what I was finding was we were almost having to be even more intentional in our coaching practices because we didn't get as much in-person time. And a lot of clients were getting almost even better results, right? So seeing that I was able to make that impact on some clients and seeing the success of coaches being able to do that, it kind of opened up this whole mindset for me, which I had a limiting mindset before COVID about remote coaching. It really didn't, I like the in-person. I do like, I love interacting with people. I love being in groups of people. But I think that the remote coaching aspect is something that opens the doors for a lot of people to hire a personal coach. And there's a lot of this misconception that, personal training or personal coaching is only reserved for like people that can really afford it. It's kind of a luxury service, right? So that was part of my inspiration for doing it, was seeing that you can have a personal coach who can help you really identify your goals and get you on the right path, hold you accountable without having to necessarily be there every single minute, every single workout that you're doing. So opening up how many people you can truly impact. Casey, Danny, well, even you, Landon, as well. I'm sure you guys can relate to this. There's only a certain amount of hours in the day that you can train people, right? So you kind of hit a cap at some point. And I've experienced that, especially when I was in Dallas. Enjoyed training. I still have a lot of great relationships with the clients that I was training in person there in Dallas. In fact, training a couple of them now remotely, which is great. So I'll never trade that experience. And there's still a ton of value for in-person coaches and trainers out there. But I think I wanted to be able to do something a little bit more agile, a little bit more remote, and also show that, hey, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be this big boundary that you can't get past to hire a personal coach.
Awesome.
I like it.
Thanks, Matt. Casey, go ahead.
So how you guys doing? Thanks for watching. My name is Casey Owens, and I've been a personal trainer for the last 7 years. I think this year was actually the 7-year mark surpassed the amount of time that I was in the pizza industry. So that's pretty cool. All before this was just pizza. So about 7 years now. Been co-owner of Freedom Fitness. Danny is one of the co-owners as well for, I guess it's almost been a year now.
That's awesome.
And so I got two younger children. Easton is about 2.5, and Levi is a little over a year old. And what's kind of cool about how the journey of me getting into training started was being the competitive person I am. I was working out and doing stuff, and my mom actually said, I bet you couldn't do a bodybuilding show. And I was like, I could do a bodybuilding show. Didn't even know what really that meant. And got into bodybuilding, had a coach. And then that coach actually was like, you'd be probably, pretty good at personal training and getting into that. So that was at a private training gym, got into that. Really did not do well. Just didn't, wasn't grasping the concept of building clientele. And so I was probably there for about 1.5 years or 2 years, got out of it a little bit, did more remote training, got a job painting pinstripes onto cars that I was like, I'm making great money and I love this. And I absolutely hated it. I'm not I was by myself all day long, and I'm just not a good person to be just working by myself, literally all day long. It just wasn't fun. So it was a blessing in disguise though. I walked into old K&N at the time, and the director of that gym would always just come up and talk to us. And then the one day I was like, I have my NASM certification. I'm a personal trainer. And Danielle was like, oh, well, awesome. Like, you should maybe become a trainer basically, or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I like my job now though. So I'll just do a couple hours of night. And that's basically it. And that couple of hours quickly by getting to know Danielle, my boss, which is also my wife now, kind of lit the fire up for my personal training again. And her development skills were just like beyond this. Like I just, part of it was because I liked her. So I listened very well to everything that she told me. So
there was extra motivation there.
There was motivation. She had no idea though. It was right over the top of her head. She had no idea. But yeah, it was definitely, she lit the fire for the personal training side of stuff. And it was kind of cool. So I was doing the pinstripe stuff and I was like, man, I really like this personal training again, like getting back into it. I just feel like it's the right move, So I called my mom that day and I was like, hey, if I quit this job and go full-time personal training, you think it'll work out? She's like, I don't really know. Like you got bills to pay. Like, I'm not really sure that's a smart idea right now. Cause I tried to do it before, right? Without quitting a job and it never happened. So I called Danielle and was like, hey, you think I can make this work like full time? Like if I just quit my job? Danielle was like, I don't really know. You should probably hold on to your job, wait a couple months, and build up your clientele. So I had called my boss after that at my job I worked at and said, hey, I'm going to put my 2 weeks in. And he's like, oh, well, go turn in all your stuff today. We don't have a lot of work, so you're good. And I was like, God, I really need that paycheck for the 2 weeks. So, but I just threw myself into it. New K&N was getting built at the time, so that I knew there was going to be a ton of people coming in. So
we had about 2,000 memberships the first weekend, so you were pretty well set up.
Yeah, exactly. So it was great. That was like the awesome transition into it. And that was like what I would say the true start of my personal training career was when I left that job and then started that. And then over the course of working 10 and 12-hour days with Danielle, eventually we're at where we're at now, where she's still my boss and also my wife. And so it's pretty awesome. And now 2 kids and everything along the way. It was great.
I love it. Danny, go ahead.
I got to witness all of that. So there's a lot more funny things that happened in there, like Danielle. So I was Danielle's supervisor at the time, and the phone call when she told us that she's dating one of our trainers, and actually I think the phone call was that she was engaged, and she hid it from us the entire time. So that was a pretty funny phone call. So we were happy for both of them. At the time.
I think we're gonna have to do a follow-up podcast where we hear this whole story.
Oh, we could go in. We could do
that's the whole story is a whole podcast. So the whole that whole time period.
It'd be like a 12-hour workday, and I'd be there, and my hips would be bothering me from working because I was having some hip issues. And I'm like, man, before we were together, I was like, man, Danielle, my hips are just. Can you stretch me out on the stretch bed? Still right over her head. Yeah, no, my moves are kind of weak. So.
All right. Well, I'm Danny McCorkle. I guess you already heard what I do. We own some gyms. We have 2 Freedom Fitness locations. And then we also have partnerships with a couple other gyms where we just do personal training for some gyms. So we don't touch the gym side or the membership side. Just we handle the personal training inside the club. But our 2 Freedom Fitness locations are, 3 years in, almost 4 years in, I guess, and doing really well. Yeah, time flies, doesn't it, Casey?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
I have been with my wife for 20 years. So, when Casey was thinking about what it would be like to be a 3rd grader, I was with my wife already. That was our before our junior year of high school, and we've made it through college together. She ended up coming down to. I played baseball in college, so I was in a JUCO in Kansas City, and then ended up going down to Georgia to finish up playing down there. And she came down there, and we made it through those tough years of college together. With me being a college athlete, that's never easy. And then got married. I actually proposed to her. I had to go down for the super senior year, your 5th year where you got a couple classes you got to finish up. She stayed back in St. Louis and started working. And I proposed to her before I went back down there just to, ease her mind. And so we ended up getting married, and I started training right then, 2010. So it's been 13 years married and 13 years in the fitness industry. So we didn't have kids right away, but right around 30, we had our first girl, Charlie. So she's 7 years old now. And then shortly after, we had our 4-year-old boy, Rory. He's a firecracker, your middle child. He's wild and spirited, and he's a lot of fun. And then we became a statistic during the COVID lockdowns, and we had our oops. So that's our 2-year-old Baylor.
I love it. That's awesome. And then Casey, did you say how long you've been married?
Wild ride.
This will be my 4th year married to Danielle.
And then Matt, how long for you? How long have you been married?
What's the math here? Wow, I'm gonna get in trouble if my wife watches this. It'll be our 8-year anniversary this year, so we've been married for 7 years. Whew. I dodged that one. I was about to get that wrong.
Hey, I made notes on that.
Smart man. Hey, it's good for you though. It's like your fitness date and your marriage date.
Right.
Makes it pretty good.
Right.
But no, Cassie and I met in college. We were college sweethearts, if you will. Yeah, I think we've been dating since she was 19 and I was 20. And yeah, we waited quite a while before we got married until we had moved to Dallas. Is when I proposed in 2015. Yeah.
Okay. So awesome. Yeah. So my wife and I, we've been married for going on 5 years, not quite. It'll be 5 years in August this year, and we were together for 2 years prior. So yeah, going on 7 years together. Actually, it's been 7 years ago this month that we met, and we were really committed to each other ever since. So yeah, together 7 years and going on 5 years married. We had our daughter Cora fairly quickly after we got married. She was born in June of 19, like I mentioned earlier. So she'll be 4 here in just a couple months. And then my son Conrad was born in February of last year, so he's 14 months now. So yeah, it's kind of cool. We all have like kids close in age. But so the first question here, and hopefully this isn't too broad, but you guys can answer this however you want. Danny, I'll start with you on this one. How is it adjusting your marriage relationship to include kids? So you've been together for a while, you're married, the baby comes along. What do you remember about that adjustment, as far as like the dynamic of your relationship with your wife?
So I would say, like, being on our 3rd child, that evolved, because you have your first one, everything's exciting, everything's new. Not to generalize, but like when you have your first one and it's a little girl, it's just like magic, like everything's just great. They're great. And Matt, I know you said you had your second one is 10 months old. Just wait, man, it's coming. It's like it all changes. So,
I don't have to wait. It's already, we're already kind of.
Oh, you're already getting there. So, the adjustments come as the different ages come, I feel like. So with that first one, we look back at pictures and, she's just playing quietly and like, just in her own, and everything just seems so easy and kind of was, and then you throw a couple more in the mix and, chaos starts to ensue, so the adjustments come as, and the changes come as you're tacking them on. So I would say that we did, we went into it with like that same mindset of our first one. Like, this is just going to be magical. Like, we love this. And, as you experience the different days and the different ages, you really start realizing that you start losing each other sometimes. Because you're so ensued with like trying to help your kids be the best that they can. that I think unfortunately it happens to most couples. Like you lose what you had together because you're focused on a different goal. But I think that's something that we can all talk about, because there's a lot of there's a lot of things to unpack with that whole thing with losing that connection at times with each other, and realizing that, you're supposed to be on one team always, and that's the way you go into parenting, but it's hard to keep that in the midst of chaos.
But you're saying that loss of connection didn't really start until like your second or third.
Yeah, that's what I
see.
mean,
For me, it was right away.
It was.
It was hard for me.
Maybe I'm forgetting.
Well, it has been a little while for you, but that's
right.
But like you described it as easy, and like I did not describe like having my first child as easy. So it's very possible that you and I had different experiences.
It's very possible. Yeah.
You were just more ready for it. I don't know.
Your first was a boy, correct?
And my first was a girl.
Oh, it was a girl. Okay. Well, I don't know,
man. Casey, what about you? So just how was that adjusting or did you have to adjust your marriage relationship? I know you did, but your marriage relationship when the kids came along.
So yeah, I guess in the different scenario for me is me and Danielle work together. So I could see it being a lot different in the aspect if you were working separate jobs. I mean, to go all day long, and I'm assuming not seeing your significant other, and then you get home and then it's kid time and stuff like that. But like with the Danielle being at the gym, I don't know. I still feel like, even though when we're at the gym, we're 100% professional, we don't allow our relationship in the gym at all. But we still get to communicate and talk all day long, so like I'm a very structured individual per se. So, I just like to know what's going on every day, but the previous day I'm planning the next day. Right. Yeah. So like, and me and Danielle have that communication with each other. So it's hearing you guys say what you said, it's just weird for me. Cause like, it's just different being with her all day long, and then, when the kid's not there, like we still get to have like those one-on-one conversations and stuff. I'm training a lot, so it's not like we're just sitting there talking all day long, but just that little bit of time helps a lot. I would say definitely the weird part was she's awesome, and she takes care of me. Definitely. She makes sure I'm fed and everything. And it's fantastic. I would say that definitely the weird part in the beginning was like having all of that attention from Danielle. And then when Easton was born, it was like, oh man, this little guy over here has got to have like this attention now as well. Right. He's a child, So I guess the weird part in the beginning was just like the adjustment of being like, we don't have that whenever we want to just sit down or talk, or, hey, are you hungry? Let's go to dinner and stuff like that. That obviously changed. So that was a little bit different in the beginning, not that I was like upset by any means, because obviously she's taking care of my child, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a super nurturing person in the first 3 months of that fourth trimester is what they call it. Right. It's just not my cup of tea. And we had that, talk with each other, but, I think I haven't yet experienced yet with her. I feel like maybe she would say differently, but I feel like, the connection is definitely still there, but it's just because I get to see her every single day, at work 5 days a week. We don't have long periods of time that we're really not with each other. We have our second one now, and it's definitely become busier in the household, right? Yeah. Like we probably talk less when we're at home, obviously, than when we're at work, right? Because we're just managing children at that point. And so, yeah, I think it's just a little bit different for me in that aspect since we work together every day.
Matt, before you share, did you have any questions for the other guys?
I felt like I did there for a second, but I already forgot it. So we're good.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. As far as yeah, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just like, so you guys were together for quite a while, and then all of a sudden baby comes along. What was that like, adjusting your marriage relationship to now include the kids?
Yeah, it that was back when we were in Dallas, and it was with Callie, that was 2019. So just to kind of paint y'all the picture of what our relationship was like, before that was Cassie and I were both, even still now, but back then very career driven, right? We were both kind of right in the very thick of like she's trying to grow at the firm she's at. I'm trying to help grow inside this franchise brand. So a lot of our time is consumed by work and by our career, right? But when we're not doing that, the way that her and I would connect was through experiences and dates, like those type of things, like going and doing stuff. That's how we kind of rewarded ourselves for our hard work with our career. And the shift came when you become a parent, you don't get the opportunity to do as many experiences, or I'm sure you guys have heard this, continuing to date your wife type thing as often as you probably like. I think that was probably the biggest initial shift for us, was like, now our relationship shifted, and hey, now we're parenting, right? Like now we have this other job title as parent. We both really aspire to be great parents. That was one thing that we both were able to kind of lean on each other for, and that we kind of did bond over that. Like, hey, how are we going to parent this way? Or what are we going to do with this? And like you said, Danny, with the first one, it's all like beautiful and everything because it's the girl and it's your first kid and you're just trying to make things perfect. So I think we did dump a lot of our energy into how we're going to be like really great parents. But yeah, Casey, that fourth trimester, man, that was a doozy, when Callie came in, and Callie wasn't great at sleeping, and all of our support, all of our family was 4 hours away. And I mean, we were very, very blessed and lucky that Cassie's mom was able to come up and kind of be there for some support. But it's different when they have to kind of almost move in with you for a week at a time, and then they leave and they come back. So yeah, I'd say the biggest difference, or the biggest change, Landon, was, just realizing that we weren't having that same, like, it was no longer just her and I. Now it was her, I, and Callie, right? And so I think there was a little bit of that. I think Cassie was realizing, she was like, oh, it's not going to be just you and me anymore. Like, it'll never just be you and me anymore. Going on a date or going on an experience or doing something, like, it's not just you and I anymore. And and I had to remind her, I was like, hey, it's fine. Like, we're doing something beautiful with our family, and we will have times to ourselves. And so I think that what that told me was we had to prioritize and be very intentional on when we did have an opportunity to date, to like make it just an awesome experience and make it just all about us. And it's hard because when you do eventually go on a date, all you want to freaking talk about is your kids. Because that's all you've been used to talking about for the past, I don't know, year or two. And so, yeah, just trying to not talk about your kids while you're on a date is like the challenge.
And all you want to do is go on that date and just be alone. And then you get there and you miss your kids and you want to.
True. You're texting, your in-laws, or you're checking the cameras at home or whatever. And you're like, what are you doing? Wait, hold on.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that.
No, not at all.
Was that, let me ask you guys, did you go through a period of, mourning's a strong word, but just kind of like, it's not just me and my wife anymore. I went through that phase, like, and Matt, you made me think of that. Just, it's like, but that really made me realize, like, I have to really be intentional with the alone time that I do have with my wife now. It has to be that much more intentional.
Absolutely, man. I think mourning is actually the perfect word, because that's how Cassie felt. Like, I think Cassie truly did feel that, and she was expressing that to me. She's like, hey, like, that's the end of just you and I.
Yeah.
And it sounds so sad to say it like that, because it's not obviously the end of you two. It's just, you're just adding another. But yeah, having to reframe that mindset a little bit was difficult at first, but yeah, you power through it.
Yeah.
Your whole world's like purpose changes as soon as that new one comes into the world. And a lot of times you don't think about that beforehand. So it hits you afterward.
Yeah. And then it's too late.
And then it's too late.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. I felt like after Easton was born, it was like the shift in mentality went from, I'm worried about me and my wife. And then the shift in mentality is like, you know, and she's probably worried about keeping the kid alive, right? Feeding the kid, keeping the kid alive. My mentality goes to, man, I got to keep working hard. Like I got to make sure that I'm bringing money to the table. I got to make sure that, so like the mentality there for me was just like, I guess there was a shift change, and it's like, I got to work harder now, you know? So I was pretty fortunate too that I ask my clients, I got a lot of clients and I ask them questions all the time about everything, life advice, all that stuff. And the fourth trimester thing was one of my clients had told me, Jeff Bender told me, he said, you know, when this first one gets here, you know, just know that it's okay if you don't get like warm, fuzzy feelings. And I was like, what? And I was like, yeah. He said, don't feel bad if you don't get those same feelings. He goes, that child will survive without you. The child needs its mom, you know. Child doesn't need you right away. Child needs mom. And I was just like, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Didn't really understand what he meant, you know, but back to like the not feeling like I'm just not a nurturing person. And then Easton was born and I was ecstatic, but it wasn't that warm, fuzzy feeling that he was talking about where like, you know, mom holds the baby and is like, oh, I could just stare at the baby all day. You know, me being a guy, I guess my brain goes to, the baby's crying. All right, you're fed, your diaper's changed, and you've taken a nap. Okay, why are you still crying right now? Like, I don't understand. Like, and so like that's just how my mentality was with him, and that's why I said I just don't think I was a very nurturing person. And then on the relationship side of things, same thing. I was asking clients about, you know, having kids and everything, and the Genos actually told me, they're like, make it a point that you go or have a date every single week, just one date. It doesn't matter if it's at home. It doesn't matter if you go out to lunch or whatever it was. Granted, that did slow down a little bit when everything became more.
Say that's a big goal, man.
It became more expensive, so it started to die down a little bit. You know, so yeah, that was. But anyways, that's a whole nother point. But yeah,
hey, at least you tried.
So but yeah, but basically every week, for the most part, it turned into every other week. You know, every 3 weeks. But even if it was just time on the couch for 30 minutes at the end of the night when the kids are in bed, just talking, you know, stuff like that. So I think we did a really good job of making that a point, and still making it a point now to make sure that we do those things. So it's great. I have a lot of good clients give me a lot of good relationship advice and everything that I listen to them on basically. Yep.
You were talking about the or not having the warm fuzzy feelings. It's kind of ironic. I was literally just talking to my wife about this either yesterday or the day before. Like, I didn't have a real connection, and I didn't feel a connection with either one of my kids until they started to recognize me, until they got old enough to they would react when they saw me as opposed to seeing anybody else. And I started to form a bond with them. That's like when I really started to feel connected with them. Like, I guess I feel like I have heard some dads be like, oh, just like when I held them for the first time, like I knew they were mine, and it's like, of course I love them, but I didn't feel that immediate connection with my kids. And yes. Whereas I knew my wife had that connection. It was, the baby was a part of her for so long. And so that's just there. But I think I would say, and again, I'm curious if you guys, Casey, you pretty much already said this, but Matt and Danny, I'm curious of your feedback, but I do think that's fairly common that the dad just does not have that connection right away.
Yeah, I think, Danny, if you don't mind, I'll go first, but I think I've categorized myself as almost a little bit sexist with this, because with my daughter, I was like, so like I was just there for her. Like, I was all about it. And it's I guess it's also the first kid too, right? So it's
sure.
First kid, everything's great, right? You haven't experienced the long sleepless nights yet, all that stuff. All the stuff that comes with your first kid. So I do think I had a little bit of that, excitement and warm fuzzies for Callie. I think also because she was a little, like, she's my daughter, she's a little girl. But Danny and Casey, I think I do understand what you're saying is, like, it's not the same as the moms. It's totally not. And I don't think we're engineered to have the same feelings
Agreed.
as the moms do. I think, Casey, to your point, it's almost like that analytical brain starts to kick on, and you're like, I got to go prepare the house or make more money or do whatever. Like, I got to go do the functional stuff.
Yeah.
Now that this baby's here. So my brain did go to that quite a bit. And then when my son came along, I almost felt guilty because I didn't feel the same way as I did with Callie when she was first born. I was like, it's just kind of, it's new to me. Now I have a son. It's a father to son relationship. Hey, I'm proud to have a boy now. This is great, but still didn't have. So that's where I relate to both of you guys the most is with my son, is I didn't have as immediate of a connection. But now when I go to pick him up from school, from their daycare, and Jackson sees me and he lights up, now I have that bond with him. Like now I'm starting to build that relationship with him over these past couple of months.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yep. I could actually say, now that I'm thinking about it, like with my daughter when she was born, I think I was all warm and fuzzy. Like that was a different experience, and there is something different about that daughter. I in my opinion, like, but as soon as my boys came out, my head went right to, hey, stop crying. They're just
suck it up.
Like
yeah.
So yeah, I mean everything you guys said is pretty much spot on. Just I think we all experience a little bit, different feelings with the first one to the second one, and with boy to girl. I think that's just completely natural.
I think it's good hearing it from you guys too, because I will say, when my one client said you're not going to get those warm fuzzies, and then I didn't, and I was like, is something wrong with me?
Yeah.
Like, why am I not getting this? But I would say, yeah, if it was a daughter, I have a feeling that I would be like, that's a different type of protection there.
Yeah, exactly.
Daughters are special.
That's good, Casey, because there was a moment there where I felt the same way. I was like, man, am I just an asshole? Like, am I not feeling the same way? Like, so it's good to hear, other dads feeling that same way.
But like you said,
I did do a deep dive. Like I went and researched why am I feeling that way. I was like, I gotta analyze myself here a little bit.
But like when you said about picking them up now, and from daycare, and now, like the interest, like I can have Easton downstairs helping me do, a little work stuff or be out in the yard and stuff like that. I definitely will say that is now when I feel like the connection is. I even do it with my youngest, like, hopefully he's walking and stuff soon, but like it was a while before it was like, once he started being able to walk and like get into things, and like you said, recognizing who you are, that was a game changer. I think it was a true peak experience though for me personally. The first time Easton said love you was like the highest peak experience I've had. Like I was just like, that was when I would say the true connection started there.
Yeah, when they get mobile and they start being able, like, wanting to go outside and play with you, that's when it turns to dad time.
Yeah.
That's when, and they start wanting you because they recognize that you're, I don't want to say the fun one, but it's like, that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
You're the rough house with the ball.
Oh yeah.
And play outside and teach them new things. And that's where we come in. And that's where our job starts getting the most important.
I want to restate what I just said a few minutes ago. Girls are very special, but boys are very special too. Of course, It's just a different kind of special. Like, they say every man wants a son, but he needs a daughter, and I can attest to that for sure. There's something very unique. There's something very unique about the father-son bond, but then I think it's the father-daughter bond is the unexpected bond that you didn't realize that you needed.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You guys good if we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from anybody if anybody had anything else. We've already eaten up a lot of time, but this was a fantastic discussion. This is like, I love it when there's questions that stem from the original question. That's great. So, Casey, I'll go to you first on this one. This is more just focus more on marriage and less so I guess kids more directly on the marriage. How do you and your wife establish roles in the home? And in other words, how do you determine who is responsible for what?
All right. So how I like to break this down is breaking it down by, what we're good at. Right. So naturally, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't do any cooking or really, I honestly, this sounds terrible, but I don't even grill anything because I am the worst cook ever. Like, I just can't cook anything to save my life. So like naturally, obviously, Danielle does a lot of the cooking and all those things and make sure that we're all fed, we're taken care of. She does all the grocery shopping. She does all that stuff. If this is this what you mean by breaking it down? Like
100%. Yep.
I'm just making sure I'm on the right track. But taking care of stuff like that, making sure that, in home that we're all taken care of inside of here. And then the roles on my end are making sure, the house, everything's put together in the house, taking care of bills. She doesn't worry about her vehicle. She doesn't have to do anything with that. I just tell me when the oil change needs to happen. I'll make sure it happens. So, stuff like that. So we've like kind of divided and conquered in those aspects. And she actually said it was really good the one time she said, because we've talked about this, like our roles essentially and like what we do. Then we've had to actually communicate to each other. And sometimes it's like, hey, I need your help doing this. Like, can you please start being better at this? Or can you please start being better at this? And she made me laugh one day. She's like, yeah, I know. It's like, if all of a sudden you're like, hey, I need you to, I go to Danielle and I say, hey, I need you to mow the grass, Danielle. I need you to start taking care of that stuff for me. She's like, what I would do is just like drag that mower in all different directions in the yard and make no lines out of it. And she's like, and then it'd probably frustrate you and you'd have to go back to mowing. I said, you're exactly right. And I was like, it'd be the same. Like if I took a bunch of clothes and threw a bunch of bleach in there when there didn't need to be bleach in there and mess it up. Like, sorry, I'm just bad at laundry, So we make jokes like that and stuff too. But we've just basically divided and conquered that in the aspect of like kids' appointments, food, all the things that on that side of the lifestyle, she keeps functioning. She keeps that going. And the side of not worrying about the house or bills to get paid or vehicle stuff, things need to get fixed. I running anytime she needs, hey, I'm out of, milk, or I'm out of this, or the kids need this, I'm immediately up and I'm like, here, I'll go get it real quick so that she doesn't have to worry about those things. She gets to be what she's amazing at, which is just being a mother all the time and being around with these children, because she's good at it. She's awesome at that part. I just try to make sure that our lives are functioning, everything around that area, try to make sure that that's functioning. And we've just noticed that that's how we perform best that way in our marriage, if we're taking care of those things.
Matt, I'm going to go to you here in a second, but before I do, I just want to say, this is something, as I kind of like wrote out this question, and then as I'm hearing you talk, Casey, like this is something my wife and I haven't really established yet, and we need to, because what it does is it sets clear expectations. And so often tension comes in marriage when expectations are not met, right? But if you don't have clear expectations set, it's like, well, then there's really no standard to adhere to. There's no expectation to adhere to. And we've gotten along okay, but I do think that could take us up a whole other notch, just as far as, okay, who is doing what? It's not just a matter of who is available at that specific time. And I think that's kind of how we've done it. So up till now, kind of like, by the seat of our pants, say like, are you available to do this? Great. You can go ahead and do that. But the reality of it is that, she's better at some things and I'm better at some things. And of course there's a time to help the other person out, of course, but just if you want your home to function optimally, it is best, just like in a business, you have someone that specializes in this role. So I really appreciate what you shared there, Casey. That's definitely something that I want to implement with my marriage.
I will say though, if I can add one more thing to that,
go ahead.
It has not always been like it took a while of, and it's still going on, communicating properly to get to that point. When the kids weren't here, Danielle take care of laundry, do things like that. First son's born, and it's like, oh man, laundry's a little bit slowed down or something like that. Start getting a little frustrated about things like that. Second kid's here, and it's like, I don't have underwear or socks. Like, what's the deal? What's going on here? Like, why aren't you doing your role? Essentially, is what I wanted.
Expectations aren't met. Yeah.
Expectations aren't met. And then I had a shift. I forgot what book I was reading, some self-development book, but I had a shift in that mindset that I had to get over that there's sometimes, like you said, that even there might be an expectations, but like, who am I to not just go throw a load of laundry in? I have 5 minutes to go throw it in anyway. So I had to get myself out of this mindset that, because I said, like, I'm a very structured person. So like she was continuing to do that. And then when that slowed down, I'm like, well, what the hell? Like, why aren't you doing that? I don't understand. So then it got to the point where there'd be times I'm throwing in laundry and helping out with laundry and doing those things now,
Doing it wrong.
Right, doing it wrong. You could ask her. I load that thing up. I tell you what, I fill it to the rim. But sometimes it doesn't work out well that way. But yeah, so but little things like that. I was just like, I had to have a mindset change on that I'm a grown ass man and I can throw laundry in and help out in that area because she's got all these bath times and all this other stuff going on. So, there was a little bit of frustrations and tensions there. And then I was just like, okay, like just help out with some of that stuff. It takes you no time at all. So, but it definitely took a little bit before I realized I'm like, man, I'm kind of being an ass. Like I need to change that mindset around a little bit. Yeah. So that definitely, it is still a growing thing on that.
Sure. I will always be growing in that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Casey. Matt, go ahead.
Casey, thanks for sharing, man. I was actually taking you brought up a lot of thought-provoking notes for me, like because there's some things in here. Yeah, same here. This is definitely an area where we are like still developing. And I would say 3 out of every 5 disagreements probably comes from something about this expectations, right, around what our roles are and what we're doing, especially since we just moved houses like within the past year. So everything's kind of different here. All of our routines are somewhat different. You got the new baby, which is the second kid, if that makes sense. So a lot of different shifts. And we both work remote now. Well, I always worked remote. She's now fully remote. And so we're, just lifestyles have changed a lot this past, I'd say, year. But yeah, a lot like you, Casey, we do have some like established roles around like things that I do, things that she does. And then there's like this middle ground where there's some shared stuff. And that's probably the spot that we really got to identify even more. You know what I mean? And I think this might actually help you guys. And Casey, maybe you and I were reading, I don't know if it was the same book or not, but I started looking at these things less as expectations and more as, hey, let's get an agreement on what we want to do together. Right? Because the word expectation, or even when you just kind of feel like, hey, I expect you to do this, right? It kind of has a negative connotation to it. It kind of feels a little bit icky sometimes.
For real. Yeah.
But if, let's just say, like, you're having your conversations with your spouse, your wife, and hey, let's get this down on what we want to do together, and let's get an agreement on what sounds good for both of us, right? And anytime something goes wrong there, we can say, hey, this is what we agreed on, like not versus I expect you to do this, because that's totally different tone, right? I think just shifting that tone a little bit helped us a lot. And a lot like you, Casey, too, is I started also seeing that there was these times where we both kind of pitched in each other's areas. Like with your example with the laundry, that's a good one. Which just to put it this way, it's funny to flip the script a little bit. I'm actually the laundry expert in our family and Cassie's not, but she'll pitch in on that side for the laundry side. Just the same way that I'll pitch in on prepping bottles and washing bottles and doing stuff like that too, because she kind of runs that side of the ship most of the time. So yeah, a lot of times when I'm looking at the roles in our family, especially with our kids, and this has nothing to do with her just being the mom. This is just the stuff that she's naturally good at and likes to do. She does probably drive more of the prepping the kids for bed, prepping the kids, like doing certain things for the kids, where like I almost feel responsible for the other stuff even more. Like I'm like, man, if I'm not pulling enough weight there, I need to go double time it over here to try to, that's how I feel anyway. That's my experience. Like I need to make sure that my stuff is in order, because I'll feel guilty that she's doing all this stuff for our kids if I don't have my stuff in order. You know what I mean? So I'll try to pitch in, of course. And we're now in this situation where one of us puts one kid down, the other one puts the other kid down. And sometimes we'll switch. So we're trying that out. But yeah, most of the time she's carrying more of that load on that side. And so I'll feel the need to like make sure that I'm doing my part on the other side.
Yep.
And you guys covered a good chunk of all that. I think we're all kind of on the same page where, like, even if you feel like you got a system and you got to figure it out, something's going to change it constantly, you know? So to say that like I have some system after 13 years and 3 kids is, it does come down to kind of what Casey said, not necessarily what you're good at, but if she really dislikes a certain thing, like I'm just going to do it. You know, like I don't want her to have any added stress. She's a superhero, you know, 3 kids. She still works full time. She works from home. So she's constantly here. So in the middle of her day, you know, she'll have some downtime where she can go do the dishes. She can go do laundry. She can do all that. So when I'm gone all day, you know, having 4 different LLCs running around doing different businesses, I'm like I don't realize all the stuff that's actually happening when I'm not here.
Yeah.
So then it's, you know, you get home from your long day or whatever, and you want to sit down and chill out and maybe play with your kids, but like, you don't realize that like all the stuff that had been done without you even being there. And the fact that your clothes are folded and back, you know, like, holy cow, I just wore that shirt yesterday. It's already clean and in my drawer. Like how'd that, these berries. So, but I've noticed too, now that we have like a 7-year-old, my 4-year-old boy's now in sports, like the whole sports aspect, that adds a whole nother thing that you don't think about when your kids are young. You know, there's a whole other set of responsibilities, signing them up, getting the equipment, getting them to practice, communicating with the coaches. And luckily I coach both of my kids. So like I'm on the end on that. So, but I'm getting them there. I'm making sure that if they have practice at the same time that they're taken care of. She dislikes cooking. So if I am home, I'm going to cook, you know, I'm going to make breakfast in the morning for all the kids. And we definitely split. Bedtime is tough with them. So you know, that is both of us every night up there trying to get any kind of routine that we can, which becomes hard as well, you know? So I think that stuff continues to change. And even with the schools, like once they're all in school, like you get 4 or 5 emails a day from each class, you know, it feels like that anyway, things you need to do and homework you need to keep up with. And so the roles are, you know, like whoever's available most of the time is who's going to be doing it. But we have those like little things, like she does the laundry. We both do dishes. We both clean the kitchen every night. You know, we both pick up the house every night. It's a lot of both of us doing it together. And then when I'm not here, she's doing 10 times more than I am. So anything I can relieve the stress is kind of what my focus is on.
Man, Danny, you wrapped that up pretty well there at the end on the whole who's available and like who's able to take kind of just own that responsibility for that time. And there's something that Cassie and I started saying, and it was, you know, less about it being 50-50 and more about it being 100-100. Like,
yeah,
everything's your responsibility, even if it's not your thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that was a shift in mindset and made it a lot easier for me to step in and do those things that may have been her thing or her role, but if it needed to be done, I'm just going to go ahead and do it just because it's the time to do it.
Yep.
I think also what has helped me a lot is accepting how certain things are just the way that they're going to be. And the best example I can give this is Danielle, and she'll tell you, Danielle is a very messy person, and I am a very clean person. Like I'm just a neat freak to the point, over the top clean, right? It's just how I am. And definitely, you know, when we've had both kids, you know, gradually, you know, the messes became worse. You know, she's just, I call it her love piles. So like she'll have piles around the house and they're love piles because the piles are there. I know that the love is still there, right? It was a shift though, getting over her not being the same way that I am. And so it was though. Danielle's got a million amazing qualities about her, and she's got some that aren't good. but I'm not going to sit there and weigh myself on the qualities that she has that aren't good, because, you know, I'm going to drive myself insane, because it won't change. She's not all of a sudden going to wake up one day and then just be that person. That's just not who she is naturally, you know? So it was a little bit of getting, and you know, I noticed it more after the kids were both here about the messiness and stuff. And it was definitely getting over a hump of my own, saying like, okay, she's not going to put everything away and put it there. You know, that's something that I can do, you know, and I'll just clean up, or I give her a pile, like I'll, you know, set a pile of all the stuff in one area for her. I'm like, here's all your stuff. Here you go. And yeah, so that helped a lot. It was hard in the beginning, because I just, you know, there was one day we had just moved into our house, and well, just moved in. It was like 6 months later. And I was still stepping over moving boxes, like stepping over them in our living room. And then one day I like tripped on the box, and I'm like, what is the problem? Like, why is there a box right where I'm walking at? Like, I don't understand. This box has been sitting here and it hasn't moved. Like, what are we doing with this? And like, I just got super angry in the moment. And so then I told her later, I was like, you know, I'm sorry. My brain like doesn't understand that. I said, but it's something I'll get better at. You know, I'll work on that. And she got better too. She honestly has gotten significantly better, because she just knows how I am with that stuff. You know, so she's better on her end about picking some of that stuff up and doing that type of things. But it was definitely more on my end. I just had to get over that. That is an unreal expectation that I had of her, and it wasn't going to happen, which is fine. And so that was a big growing point in me mentally there, because I mean, I'm talking my nightstand gets put the same stuff is set on my nightstand every night. You know, I'm laying clothes out in the morning. Everything's got a certain position. That's how like crazy I am about it. That's not a real expectation of anybody, right? So that was definitely a shift for me. You guys made me think about this when you started talking. I was like, oh yeah,
that was real, Casey. That was real relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get to share an office with Danielle, so I get what he's saying.
You understand.
I like what you said, Casey, how like you had to come to terms with the fact that that's just who she is. And there's a time and place where we need to change either, and we can talk to our spouse about things that we would like them to change. And we need to look at ourselves and be like, hey, this is causing a conflict in our marriage, whatever. I need to change this aspect about myself. But there are some things that, and we'll just talk about like our wives, for example, that it's just like, you know what, this is a part of who they are. The part of it that's bothering me, it's more about me and who I am. And it's probably gonna be easier for me to change than for them to change in order for, as far as for our relationship to continue in harmony. It's going to be easier for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
100%.
Anybody have anything else on that one?
I think Casey's example of him kind of painting that picture of that's an unrealistic expectation for her to make such a big shift, that he was like, I need to reestablish my expectation.
Yes.
And realign, like, and also just kind of be okay with the fact that sometimes things are just going to be the way that they are. Like, if you know, it's okay if nothing changes drastically. So
I'd say, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, there's two sides of like Casey's situation. So my wife is very like, grew up in like, her dad was a custom home builder for a while. So their house constantly had to look show ready, because every house they built was technically for sale. And so she brought that into our household. So great, we don't have kids, right? Great, maybe when you have like one kid. So, you know, and our house does stay very clean, but she's, you know, anal about it. But as it's evolved into 3 kids, like there's been some things that she's had to give up, like, okay, like the expectations for herself had to come down a little bit, because it's not, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to keep everything picked up all the time. You just can't do it.
That was me, 100%. That was me, especially when the second kid came around.
I think, you know, we had plenty of conversations about that, you know, as the years have gone on, like about the expectations for the house and like what we can control and what we can't. And this is how we're going to do it, you know? So, and that's about organizing your house more than anything into being functional for having kids, you know?
Yeah. All right, we could roll into the. How are we doing timer? We roll into the final question here. We okay if we do that? Or any other thoughts before we move on?
No, good.
I'm going to start this one off by more sharing my personal experience. And this is going to be a question for everybody. We're not going to do any order on this one. So my son, he's a bad sleeper. Okay. Slept horribly for the first year of his life. And like, if he woke up 2 times a night, that was a good night. But like, usually it was like 3 to 4 times a night. And when I say wake up, he'd be up for like 30 minutes minimum. Typically it was an hour or 2 or 3 hours.
Super frustrating.
Yeah. And that was for the whole first year of his life. Just within the past month, we never liked, and this is a whole other conversation about parenting. We never liked just letting them cry it out. We never liked that tactic. I know some people claim like that's what you should do and that works and everything. But now that he's older, we've started to do that since he's old enough. We know he's okay. He's not like, in serious pain or anything like that. Like he's been fed, he's been rocked. He's just mad. He just wants us. And so now we've started to sleep train him where it's like, it's time to go down, buddy. And we lay him down and we walk out of the room. And it just in a few days, it's helped dramatically. Now he knows, oh shoot, I got to sleep now. And so we've finally been getting some good sleep. He still wakes up a couple times a night, but like he'll go right back down. And it's great. But the whole point of this is there was multiple times throughout the first year where I looked at my son and I either said or thought, I've missed out on a lot of sleep and a lot of sex because of you. And I'm sure every dad can relate to that. So my question for you guys, and again, I'm not directing this at anyone specifically. Anybody can answer this. First of all, like, can you relate to that? And then how did you approach those seasons of your marriage or seasons of parenting to where there was a lack of intimacy there? And that can, for men, that's a very significant part of how we bond with our spouse. And I think it's more so for men than for women. And so how did anybody want to share a little bit on that? Like, as far as that challenge, and did you talk to your spouse about that? Is there a way that you navigated through that? What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
I'd like to hear him.
I mean, same thing. I guess I'm in just the lucky boat that both of my children have been great sleepers. Danielle put them on a schedule. Like, she read some book. She handled all that same stuff. She read this book, and like they were on good sleep schedules, pretty early on into their.
What is that book, man? Give the book recommendation.
I will find out, and then I will let you guys know. I don't remember.
Put it in the podcast notes, Landon.
Yes, yeah. I could do that.
I swear to you, she read this book.
I think I recommended it to her. Let me find it real quick.
If you did,
Crazy, I think you need to thank Danny.
So yes,
we did it with all 3 of ours, and our kids all slept well. But the hard part is you never break your sleep schedule. But go on, Casey.
Yeah, I was just gonna say in that aspect, I guess they slept, always good. So and I'm a night owl. I'm just, dude, it's not hard for me to stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning. Just, it's easy for me. And so, I'm awake, and normally, because I've planned out the day, everything that I need to is taken care of and stuff like that. I just think that, I'm 28 years old, I'm a young man still. So testosterone's always booming. So I think that, I'm in a different scenario, I guess, in that aspect. They're slept, everything's taken care. I try to make sure by the end of the day that every single thing is taken care of. All the must-haves are done, so that I'm not losing out on time with Danielle at night, and so it's just having everything done. Granted, at the same time, we still get tired like everybody else and all that stuff. We just, try to make it a priority that we just, keep making sure that we make time for ourselves, pretty much, and half the time, at night is the time that we have with each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, if that was you that recommended that book, Danny, thank you very much.
It's called Baby Wise.
Okay. There you go, dads. Baby Wise.
I haven't read it.
Maybe you'll get a sponsorship out of that.
Yes. So what I'm hearing, Casey, is, I mean, first and foremost, get them to sleep if you can, but then make sure all the things that you can't, here's what I'm hearing from you, all the things that you can control, make sure they're taken care of. Because if all those things are out of the way, it makes that time with your wife that much easier. And because, men can typically flip the switch and be ready to go regardless of what's going on. But like for like my wife, if there's like any type of stress or anything like on her mind, like she can't get into it. Like she's not in the mood. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of women, at least with the research that I've done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but again, going back to what you said, Casey, is if you can do what you can to get all those other areas taken care of, it's going to mean that much less stress for her and much easier for her to be able to just want to spend time with you and bond with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think everybody can probably find what you said about making sure things are taken care of. If there's certain things that like at the end of the night, if for 10 nights in a row, she's like, oh God, I got to get this done.
Yeah.
Or I got to get this done. And it's constantly on her mind. Step in as a man and take care of it. And then it's off of her mind now. Right. Yeah. So that's just about listening to, listening to her if she's got all these things going on. Like you said, what can you do to relieve that stress?
Yeah.
Right. Granted, it's not always going to be perfect by any means, but yeah, I like what you said there.
Well, it was inspired from you, so.
I like how you worded it. There you go.
I think there's another part of it. I think that like absolutely helps is like taking the stress away. But so there's another book. It's about love languages. But if you can get through and find out what their love language is, that I think is, at least is what I'm told from her, what gets them in the mood quicker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be one of these things that's just going to be like, oh, I did your love language here. Let's go. It doesn't work that way. I think it's something that's going to have to compound over some days or a week. But also because they can't flip a switch the way we can, preparing them for that, for what your feelings are right now on the inside, even if it's a day before, it seems to help. And then finding that time that you do have, and sometimes it's in the morning, getting up early and having that time, that intimate time, and then being able to get a cup of coffee before your kids even wake up. That's a great morning.
That's a great morning.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, man, you're beat, man. Everybody's, and you're pushing yourself through that. So,
God, I'm useless in the morning. I'll be honest.
Hey, you'd wake up for that though, wouldn't you?
I honestly, dude, I'm telling you, I'm absolutely useless in the morning. I mean, it takes me a while to get, like I said, I'm a night owl. Like it's easy for me to stay up at night. In the morning, oh man, it takes a little bit to get to 300 milligrams of caffeine to get the body woken up. Yeah, it takes a little bit to get going in the morning.
Hey, desperate times call for desperate measures.
But I'm only on kid 2. Maybe kid 3, I become a morning person. Who knows?
You're also only 28, so.
Yeah. 28 too, yeah. So that helps out significantly.
Danny,
go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So, no, it did bring up a good point on the morning, because it definitely was our case a couple of times for sure. But I think the bigger picture was that it was when it was available,
Sure.
And sometimes that was during lunchtime because we were both remote working, right? Or something like that. So it's not always going to be able to happen at night for us just because of the night routine, right? And it's very actually more rare for it to happen at that time that we all think it should happen, because we are tired from the day. We do have the kids that are not great sleepers yet. We're kind of going through different phases there. So I think it is kind of finding out like what is that time where the stars align, where the energy's high, we have less distractions. And she's also like, again, stars align, like she doesn't have a lot of stress.
Yeah.
To y'all's point, like my radar for something happening, I know is low if these other things aren't taken care of, right? And not necessarily chores, but things that I know might be on her mind, right? If it's a stressful day or if there's something else going on, then I have to realign like what my expectations are there.
Thanks, Matt.
Speaking of that, she just got home, so if we're wrapping this up.
Both of you kind of alluded to this. Do you guys pretty much have to plan it, or is there still some spontaneous, like, oh, it just happened?
Definitely still some. Yeah, half the time I'm trying, but it ain't happening anyway. So yeah. You got to say it's spontaneous still.
Danny, what's your batting average, man? Like batting 500 over there?
It's not good. I went through a phase where I was like, well, if I just try every day, maybe it'll happen more. It backfired.
I love it.
Yeah, I'd like I said, same thing. I'm just a structured person, but like it's not like we're texting like, hey, I'm putting you on the calendar for this time. Like that by any means. It might be like in the morning or something before, she says she's leaving for work, and I'm like, hey, what I'm saying? Like something like that, and it's like, I got you. So that's the planning as far as that.
I love it.
As a joke, seriously, I did put it on the calendar like 2 weeks ago and put an alert, put another alert just so she could see the family calendar, and it worked.
It worked.
Nice.
Got about 30 minutes. Second alert just came out.
I'm already in there warming up.
Right.
Stretching. Oh my gosh. No, I think I think like going into like having kids, I thought like, oh, it's still gonna be spontaneous. And it's like if you completely rely on like instinct, it ain't gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like you gotta be more intentional with it. You gotta communicate about it.
I agree.
Don't overstructure it though. Because like we were saying earlier, like if there now becomes an expectation.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're exactly right, Matt. There's a sweet spot there. Like when and I know we're getting a little long here, but like if you've ever tried to have a child, then it's like, all right, here we go. Then you do have to structure it, and it's still fun, of course, but it's like, yeah, kind of like, this is what I signed up for.
They're the most into it when it's structured like that. They know that know there's a goal there. Man, that was fun.
Well, I'm not saying it wasn't fun. Like I said, it's still fun, but there's a part of me I'm just kind of like, no, I won't.
Landon, you're gonna have to do a special edit for each one of our wives, one that's tailored to each one, where we said all the nice, great things about them in our episode, and we can send that to them. So,
I'll get to work on that. Yeah. Well, this is great, guys. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time. If you would hang on just a couple minutes after I hit the stop button, just so I can tell everybody goodbye and just appreciate all you guys just taking the time out of your day. And I hope my listeners aren't getting tired of me having like, I think just about all my guests have been like people in the fitness industry, but that's just the people that I know.
Right.
Any closing comments or thoughts before we wrap it up?
I don't know. If you find yourself in Cowdaville, come on by Freedom Fitness and check us out. Private personal training gym.
There you go. Cowdaville, Missouri.
Yeah. I didn't wear my shirt. I feel bad.
To get up there.
And Matt, if you ever want to come up, we'll be doing DECA here in September. So
that's a good excuse right there. Come up there in September.
Landon, obviously you're welcome.
Thank you.
Out. We're going to do that one at our Wentzville facility, September 30th. So it's a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Send me the details. And yeah, Landon, feelings mutual, man. Thanks for having me on. This has been fun. I feel like I got some good nuggets out of it. Just hearing all three of you talk. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's good to know like people are feeling the same type of feelings as well, because I don't think this stuff doesn't get talked about very often. Actually, a couple of my friends, I did ask something that you guys could do too. A couple of my friends that had kids, I would say, hey, how are you doing? Because guys don't get asked how they're doing. They really don't. Kids, they don't ever get asked how they're doing. And, and then me and my buddies, I feel like even the relationship with them gets closer, because they don't get asked that question. Yeah. So just something to think about, just asking, your friends, how's fatherhood treating you? And it's always funny because everybody I've asked, they just laugh.
Yeah.
They just laugh. I'm like, you haven't been asked that. And they go, nope. I said, it's because your feelings don't really matter at this point. And then we get into the conversation, which is good. It's just good to let that stuff out.
Yeah. Men do need to surround themselves with like-minded dads and other guys. And a lot of times we just feel like we can do it on our own, or we don't need that. But if they're listening to this podcast, that's one step. There's resources like this out there for you. So, but yeah, even if it's just one person, make sure that you can confide in somebody and talk to somebody about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You guys are speaking my language. That's what, like, the whole point of, like what you said, Matt. That's the whole point of this podcast. And like when we were all messaging prior to doing this whole thing, I mentioned that, just like I feel like a lot of guys are just they don't get talked to about it, and don't ask them about it, and they don't really know who to ask questions, or they don't really talk about it amongst each other. And so then all these guys feel like they're alone. They're the only one feeling this way. And what we've proved today is that you're not the only one.
There's no perfect formula to this.
No. And like we said, there's always times to call an audible. There's always times things are constantly changing, whether it's a move, it's another kid, maybe it's an illness or an injury, something like that. And things have to change. And so you have to find, there's that structure, but then you got to be willing to bend things and shift things if necessary. It really, at all times, you have to be ready to shift things if necessary.
This was a neat case study because I'd never met Casey or Danny before, but there's a lot of things that we had in common.
Yeah.
A lot of similar threads in our stories there.
Yeah. I did want to add, I forgot to tell, I was going to say this earlier, that
okay.
One of the other things was great is that we have come to the point now where, like, if it's been a long day, or we've talked, it's just been a long work day, I think a lot of people, everybody experiences stress at work and what's going on with work, and it starts piling. And the first people you see when you get home are the first people you typically take that out on when you're not trying to, just because you're upset or angry or whatever about the day. So pretty early on, it was one of those things where I'd come home and, like, if it was just a long day, I'd be like, Danielle, I just need like an hour. Like, I just need to go outside, go play Xbox. Like, I just need an hour to focus up, like, get my brain back into it. Cause I know that I wasn't going to be a good husband or father if I would have just came home and just went straight to that stuff, And so I took the hour, reset the mind, come back and get back into it. But that works both ways. So when I say that, it's like dads, husbands, dads, whatever, go home. You can't just constantly say, I need an hour every single night to yourself. There's also nights I come home and I'm like, hey, I'm going to take the kids, like, go take a shower, go relax, like, go do your thing, because it should work both ways. She'll never ask for it. She'll never do that. It's just how she is. Like I said, super woman, And so, but I think it's just as important that she allows me to have that time to reset. So I give that time to her as well.
Yeah. I love it. Appreciate you sharing that. That was actually one of the questions we didn't get to, Casey, and you answered it. I was asking, like, what you guys do to recharge, but we'll have to maybe save that for another time.
Round two, run it back.
Yeah. Anything else? We all good?
Thanks for having us.
Of course, guys. Thanks so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks, Landon.
All right. I hope all of you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I want to give a huge thank you to Casey, Matt, and Danny for coming on the show and sharing, being vulnerable. What an amazing conversation. Thank you guys so much. I want to remind everyone, please subscribe to us wherever you are watching or listening to this episode of Savage with Mercy. Of course, follow us on Instagram at Savage with Mercy as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week, and I'll catch you next time.